Happy holidays. Welcome to the 7th broadcast of the PVC Morning Dawn Study Group at Padma Samye Ling. Today we'll be discussing Chapter 7 from the Venerable Khenpo Rinpoche's book, The Buddhist Path, which is called Lovingkindness. So first we'll do opening prayers like usual, and then we'll begin the discussion. Thanks so much. Samantabhadra, Vajrasattva, Pramadabhadra, Sri Singha, Dhammakara, the 25 king and subjects, Zor, Nun, Yang, and 100 Tirtans and others, the lamas of the Kama and terminal lineages, to you I pray. The supreme tradition of the glorious Buddha, Padma Samye, which is the essential, extraordinary view and doctrine of the early translation school, you keep alive and spread by the light of wisdom. Lord of Dharma, great Khenpo, I pray at your lotus feet. In the palace of the Ogman Dharmadhatu, the essence of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, the one who shows clearly the Dharmakaya of my own mind, who pray to the Honorable Guru, glorious true teacher, precious one, dwelling on the lotus seat on the crown of my head, hold me with your great kindness, and bestow the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind. Om Marabasanadi, 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 Om So then in the beginning of Chapter 7, which begins page 37, this loving-kindness, quick overview. The first Venerable Khenpo Rinpoches say that once you have the thought to attain enlightenment, then the next step is to increase that motivation to attain enlightenment as much as possible, and then to wish for everyone to generate bodhichitta. And for those who have already generated bodhichitta, for them to continue generating bodhichitta as much as possible. And then they go on to say that compassion is based on loving kindness, and that once you have love for others, you don't want to hurt them. And with immeasurable love, you will always treat all beings as your loved ones. And then now, we more or less love only a few people, and it's mainly based on attachment. But immeasurable love is different from this. It's based on recognition or understanding of emptiness, and thus it becomes an immeasurable love. So then we'll go to this first topic point we'll talk about.
Typically, at the present time, we love only a few people, ourselves, our family, our close friends. This limited notion of love is an ordinary emotion. The love between 2 people is part of the love and compassion we are talking about, but this form of love is based on attachment and clinging. The immeasurable love of bodhicitta is based on emptiness. Since infinite love is combined with equanimity, it is not an emotion. It's page 37, 3rd paragraph.
I was thinking about this. We kind of discussed a little bit last session when we were talking about bodhicitta. I was thinking about, just how Rinpoches are talking about here, how referring to love, like our ordinary love, like that we might feel for our girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, or just another person. And I just thought, it just seems like an interesting subject to just think about more, like that thing, how everybody experiences love somehow, in some way. It's like so apparent to us, and then here it is also when it's limited. Just that, to look at that difference between limited love and then this limitless love, and then just thinking about too, like this thing of, you know, the empty nature of things and equanimity and how that kind of transforms everything. But I don't know, it's not really a question, but just kind of, it seems like that bridge between this limitation and not like necessarily, obviously love is lovely, we don't want to reject our love for others, but just like this whole practice of expanding it and not grasping so much. Just wondering what other people kind of thought around that general area of actually actualizing that, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that last sentence, the since infinite love is combined with equanimity, it is not an emotion. I wasn't sure why that made it not an emotion. Because you're not feeling it for, like, in the same way as you would for a parent or something like that. Why is it that combined with equanimity is not an emotion?
I think this is a particular translation issue too, I think, because oftentimes they say emotion free from emotion. And I think often there's really a distinction between negative or afflictive emotions and then positive or natural emotions. I mean, at least I think there really is a little translation issue there, that afflictive emotions come from when we're tied and grasping, eco-clinging, or have a particular something in mind that we're trying to get with a very limited view. And so then any emotion we would have, whether it's something we're trying to pull towards us or push away, then that would be afflictive, meaning based on grasping. And that a positive goodness quality or natural emotion, they say here that love between two people, or that is like a little window into our bodhicitta, this larger, vaster, unlimited bodhicitta, or these goodness nature qualities. But that when we're connected to that bodhicitta, or that nature, or that emptiness nature, that its arising capacity is naturally loving, compassionate, and kind, and that would be considered a positive emotion, like a positive expression of that. So then to say just free of emotion, sometimes it seems like, oh, just zombie-like, or, oh, I want to be free of emotion. And everyone says, I don't want that, because that doesn't seem so fun. Yeah. There's that distinction.
So you think that it's really, that it's not an afflictive emotion?
I think so.
Or an emotion based on just like this klesha consciousness or whatever, this dualistic belief in, you know, it's seeing the emptiness nature, I think. And the reason why it can be vast and impartial and boundless and immeasurable is because it's not just taking, you know, a narrow, limited perspective of myself is real, everyone else is real, and therefore, within that spectrum,
I
you
kind of
have
like
preferences. You know?
I kind of like the idea of thinking about that, the emptiness as without boundary, you know, kind of like without drawing lines around like me and you, or like this, you know, community, and there's kind of like these borders or boundaries, and like that the emptiness is really just that totally open without any of those boundaries, like that love that you share with one person, with a few people, that like just really like working to extend that like beyond all, you know, and because they're just concepts anyway, just conceptual notions of me and you and us and this country, and I mean all of those. It's just totally a you know, it's a figment, or you know, it's illusory, those lines that we draw in our minds of the map of the world, you know. So just really kind of pushing that. It's like expanding.
And it seems too, there's that expansiveness, and then there's also that part of like the clarity. Like even in a relationship with one person, when there isn't so much grasping and like totally holding ourselves to be a certain way or a certain thing, and that person to be a certain way and behave a certain way, but to really, like that part of love where we see, just really clearly see the beautiful qualities, and even more than that, just know there's no or whatever, have trust, or just that when there's not so much clutching or holding on, there's that openness, and at the same time there's like that clarity aspect, which of course, I mean, that's a term we always use a lot with the clarity and emptiness. But even just in that sense of like how, even in one-to-one with one person, not to mention infinite, limitless sentient beings, you know. But just even that, the way beginning with one person, kind of, where we can really appreciate the beautiful qualities and see them clearly, and but yet not, you know, not be so restricted or thinking that, oh, this person is only this one way, or they, you know what I mean. And there's lots of ways it can go, but that clarity aspect of like clearly seeing what it is we love, and just not the way that's so smooth and kind of just vivid, and it does kind of seem to have a feeling of expanding and more easily breathes, you know, with everything, and allows room for growing.
I think that's a really big point there. I mean, both are what you both said. That one is there's no fixed boundary, so we can love one person and two and three, and like really our feeling, our sense of appreciating and honoring someone else can really include everyone. But at the same time, there is a clarity about what we appreciate. Like it's not that there's no boundaries, meaning, oh, I'll treat everyone like my little brother or something because I really love him, and so I'm just going to have that same relationship with everyone. It's really specifically appreciating specific things about different people, that everyone has this Buddha nature, but it's manifesting in such unique, really special ways differently for different people. So where there's, on one side, more the emptiness side, there's this inclusivity to really see this openness to include more and to honor more in less tight, fixed way. But at the same time, it's really appreciating the detailed expressions that we all bring. So there's not this general, sometimes it's like, well, I have to love everyone equally. Well, that means I can't love my mom as much. Or I have to love everyone like I love my mom. Like, how does it work practically? But it doesn't have to be the same role that we put everyone into. It's more like that inclusivity, but then a very unique, specific way of appreciating and loving. I think that's really important to see both that clarity side and the openness, empty side.
And it seems too, I mean, it's just always interesting, you know, with the four boundless, like before, you know, or the four aspirational aspects of bodhicitta, right? Is often how they're in the lineage they're referred to, but that it's just, I think it's interesting the way, like there's the traditional order of like here, and how even Rinpoches refer here, how compassion is based on loving kindness, and then of course then there's the rejoicing aspect, and then equanimity. And it's interesting, I mean here we're more talking about loving kindness, like that's something as an ordinary being like myself, I mean that's something we can easily refer to something, somewhere. I think everybody can refer to that loving kindness. And then there's this deeper aspect, like, you know, Patrul Rinpoche, and it's just part of the Buddha's teachings, how it's the equanimity, the boundless equanimity, that makes all the, you know, the rest boundless and open, or like Rinpoche's here, not an affliction, because it's not limited. So it's interesting how the Buddha, it's like equanimity comes last, and yet it's the thing that makes all the four boundless and immeasurable and limitless, and really closer to, you know, keeping that view and then helping us actualize it. And then at the same time the Buddha starts with like this practice of just connecting with loving kindness, because it seems like it's something everyone can relate to some degree, and then grow from there. Just interesting. Just like generosity is like the first paramita. And of course it's like the prajna paramita, the wisdom paramita, that makes all the paramitas like really transcendent. But yet it's kind of just this thought of generosity is the first paramita in a way. It's just interesting the way the Buddha gave that. I mean, I'm not saying I know why the Buddha did anything, but but just how that object of actually giving and an open and generous heart and mind and is kind of definitely first step towards actualizing our bodhicitta too. Which maybe that kind of, I don't know, unless there's more to say about that, maybe we should move to the next.
Yeah,
Kind of
we'll go on to the
area
next, and then we
goals.
can just kind of pull
Yeah.
together ideas if people have things to say about the first one too.
Yeah.
So in the second section of this chapter, Rinpoches are making the point that everyone wants to be happy and no one wants to suffer, and that with love we can actually help other people find happiness and experience that happiness that everyone wants. And then they go on to talk about the next Buddha, Buddha Maitreya, of this fortunate eon, that his name means loving kindness. It's Maitri or Maitreya. And then he became a Buddha by practicing only one technique, and that was this same technique of loving kindness. And so with love, we'll also develop the capacity to be patient with others with the difficulties and changing circumstances, and that if we don't have patience now, that really what we need to cultivate is love. And then they say, Rinpoche say that when we generate bodhicitta, we'll become happy. And that we'll be actualizing our own bodhicitta then, and then also working to benefit other beings at that same time. And so that attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others, they also make this point which is really strong. Attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others is the best thing that we can do in this life. And we should try to expand this loving attitude without expecting anything in return, and that we can mentally even give our own happiness to others and take on their suffering onto ourselves. And this is called exchanging self and others, and related to this practice of Tonglen. So that's this second section of this chapter. And would someone like to read this second point? Andrew, you read, or?
Sure. When you generate bodhicitta, you will be happy about what you are doing. There are two reasons for this happiness. First, you are actualizing bodhicitta within yourself, and second, you are engaged in working for all beings. Among the many different thoughts you have every day, the thought of enlightenment is the most important. As you develop this thought and increase it to include all the sentient beings who are in need, it will bring great joy, because what you are doing is so special. Attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others is the best activity you can do in this life. All sentient beings will join you in rejoicing, because you are dedicating your activities for their benefit. That's page 38, the second full paragraph.
I always, when I first read this, I thought that when they say, of all the thoughts you have in your day, just the constant thoughts, the thought of bodhicitta is the most important. I mean, when I first read this, I knew nothing about Buddhism, nothing knew anything now, and that was like, it just hit me, and I was like, it's just like, no buts about it, it's just like, it's the most important thought. I just thought that was like, wow.
I thought something similar today, that sometimes we have such this wealth of Dharma teachings and instructions and practices and books we've read, and I thought of the times of like ancient times in Tibet, where people would have to travel so far to see their teacher and receive one teaching once, and then they travel back and maybe not even see that teacher again their whole life. But it's almost like receiving an instruction that's so clear like that, like bodhicitta is the most important thought, that sometimes even if we just really keep something simple and really kind of go into just one thing, one idea, one technique, it really that seems like, and I agree, it seems like one of those striking pith instruction techniques that we could really, if we resonate with that and really hold that in our heart, it seems like really we can go really far.
It's just such a sweet, wonderful thing reading about bodhicitta and loving kindness. Like you think about, it's just not so surprising in a way. Like it's so common. Because it's so common that we all want to be happy. That all beings like wish for happiness and love. Like it's just obviously in a way, not obviously because it's not obvious to most people. But I mean, just when you just reflect on that for a little bit. Of course, like everyone loves that, and when you feel love for someone else and it's reciprocated, or like a group, it's just like so warm and magnetizing, and everyone's happy. So I mean, it's really a beautiful teaching.
Yeah, I thought it was important to this is kind of related to the first one, but also on this dynamic between impartial, meaning like on an absolute level, and the relative, meaning the specific, interaction with people as individuals, that we can actually interact with, not in an abstract way. But on the one hand, it's like, on the one hand, bodhicitta has to do totally with ourselves. Like, I think it's really important, even though Shantideva said, all happiness without exception comes from others, all suffering comes from thinking of others, and all unhappiness comes from, or suffering comes from thinking of ourselves. But I think it's so important to realize that, like, the other people aren't like, say you have a relationship with somebody, and there's love there. It's not that the other person is giving you that love. If you think that love is just the other person's, like, the love you have for them just comes from the other person, then of course when that falls apart, it's a total disaster. No more love. Love is gone. Now it's a nightmare, That's the exact opposite of bodhicitta. Like, the love is when you recognize in yourself, to a certain extent, that, like, those beautiful qualities that other people bring out in you because you stop searching. It's like, in a certain sense, you stop looking for something and twisting things and trying to get what you want so much. You recognize those qualities, and then you just relax for a minute, and you enjoy, and that's, so I don't know. So on the one hand, bodhicitta, which is related with another point that Rinpoche said, if you find yourself getting really impatient with people and this and that, it's not that they're making you that way. It's that you yourself can need to cultivate more of that bodhicitta from your own side. So in that perspective, it doesn't have anything to do with other people giving you something that you don't have. It has to do with connecting with those qualities that are innate in you. But otherwise, you always think you're getting, somebody else is going to do it for you, and the next relationship, or the next, they made me so angry, And the impartiality comes in with, like, that view of emptiness and recognizing that that's your nature. That's their nature, that's your nature. And then I just thought one more point, which is really important. This doesn't mean that we can't have favorites in a certain sense. Or tell me, what do you think about this? You can have love and compassion for all beings, but still have a special place in your heart for your mother, or for your teacher, or for your, another friend. Just because you have love and compassion and bodhicitta for all beings doesn't mean on the relative level you have special relationships with people that takes these different forms, that it's, I don't know, I think there's like this idea that like everything becomes equal in like a
Bland way.
In a bland, uncaring, robotic, like generic, it's a very generic way.
It just like blurs the special qualities like we were talking about earlier, like just as though this blanket love that like everything gets kind of like covered in it, rather than like kind of highlighting these like specific qualities that are kind of dynamically shooting through that blanket of love, that both can like kind of coexist, and it's good to, they naturally do, I think, like what you're talking about.
And that's clear in the teaching. They say of those three types of meditation experience, like bliss, clarity, non-thought, that this bliss, holding on to a feeling of satisfaction, of pleasure, of happiness, of love, the whole like, I love you, that's a really big obstacle. It's what you're talking about. This blanket, being attached to the pleasurable feeling of feeling good, That is like one way that the teachings really clearly say that that's not boundless love.
Because there's conditional love.
It's conditional. It's an experience that we're having and trying to recreate or trying to hold, and it's not like a natural expression. There's definitely a really strong holding there. Just as if it was an outer object giving us the love, we're holding that too. That's what you said.
So is that, how do you make it, or how do you allow it to be boundless? Because you gotta start somewhere.
I think it really has to do with the clinging. It's really just like that whole notion of like, so there's this experience of love, and putting a box around it, or putting your hand on it, or however you want to say it, but it's like drawing a line around it, or saying like this this is what it is, and I'm calling it this, and like it just goes from there, and name it, and like.
Right, or what is love?
Yeah.
Is the classic question.
Love is chocolate.
Yeah.
Ice cream chocolate.
But it seems to,
Serotonin.
I mean, it's kind of what I think we're all talking about, Amanda was touching on, is just, it's so simple. It's this like music that tames a wild beast, or this like drop of like nectar that's just so soothing. The thought of loving kindness, or like Rinpoche said, you know, I forget the exact words Khenpo Rinpoche said, but when we act like with the spirit of loving kindness, then we're completely one with the activity of all enlightened beings. And then the way here with this practice, the way, you know, keeping bodhicitta, the way even like this whole book, you know, on opening to our primordial nature, and how bodhicitta ultimately is, our primordial nature is nothing but bodhicitta, completely, you know, unfettered and completely awake. I mean, all those Buddha qualities, enlightened qualities, and that aspect of how keeping that thought of enlightenment, and keeping the thought of all beings, and like whatever these drops of nectar that soothe us, and like trying to call them back into our mind as much, and do these beautiful practices. Because obviously if we're working in the thought of enlightenment and bodhicitta, but then also this practice of trying to actualize and absorb the teachings into our mind and heart, then it's kind of that path. There's all these levels and beautiful ways we can connect to like the practices, and how bodhicitta just, it pulls it all together, because ultimately in the teachings it is everything. And again, not to make it murky and like lose sight of all the vivid qualities and dynamics of how we can work with our own mind to actualize our Buddha nature and help, you know, help be of benefit to all beings, and be part of just that natural flow that awakens all beings to their own Buddha nature, and find that those drops of peace. It's just the way the practice becomes deeper, the way, you know, we become more and more. It's just become more and more rich, I guess, because more and more we're uncovering, you know, the beautiful Buddha nature we all have, or the bodhicitta. I mean, yeah.
So, but on page 39 they say that you have to practice these. But while you practice them, you also try not to box them in. But then it's like, by practice, do they mean do more than just kind of replicate this experience, which is pleasurable, you know, love, and then not box it in, or, you know, practicing it? What do they mean by it?
Where
That's bottom of page 39.
Towards the end.
It says love and compassion do not develop just by talking about them. They are attitudes that have to be practiced.
Yeah.
So if you practice that attitude, isn't that a little bit of kind of...
It could be. It can be boxing it in. That's why they say, like here, Khenpo Nachon, on his commentary on the words of my perfect teacher, the order in which the four boundless qualities are explained in the text puts love first, like what you were saying. However, according to the tradition of the fifth instructions, if we do not start by meditating on boundless impartiality, the others will simply turn into the Brahma Viharas. Basically, it'll be love, but it'll be limited. It'll be compassion, but it'll be limited. So I think generally they start by thinking of your mother or someone close to you, and then cultivating that feeling, then thinking of all the other beings that you don't know, all your friends and everyone else, and realizing that infinite times in the past, they've been your mother. You know, they've been your friends, they've been so many times, so expanding that, like, really specifically, to everyone during this session. And then they say, at the end, you have to, like here, maybe just one more thing. He said, when you've meditated properly on impartiality, like during the sessions themselves, your mind may start to change a little. But if you do not continue to reflect in the breaks between the sessions, when you're going about your daily life, you will revert to your former bad habits, like iron that glows red when heated in the fire and turns dull and black when it is pulled from the flames and left on the ground. So it's even more important to meditate in the breaks than during the sessions themselves. So anyway, that's kind of related with the...
No, it seems. So I was thinking too, like even like what you're talking about in, and it's almost like as soon as we think we know, we stop to grow. It's not that we can't acknowledge like whatever kind of recognition and realization or understanding or insight we might have, but as soon as we start to like rest on our laurels or whatever, everything, like it's that in a way, whether it's when we stand up and we forget everything in our practice in our day, you know, or whether we just stop to practicing altogether because for whatever reason we think. But just like really this whole aspect of practicing, there's always more to learn. I mean, you look at, you know, our precious great teachers, they're studying, they're contemplating, they're meditating, you know. All the great lineage masters are like absorbing. There's so much more, you know, just the more we can just acknowledge all of these, you know, good things, dedicate the merit, but like keep our joy, devotion, courage and commitment, like Rinpoches always say, and our bodhichitta, and like just practice, keep our practice going and alive with this really essential, juicy, like qualities, you know, without you know, grasping too much or relying too much on what we know, not boxing ourselves in that sense, but just keep going. Like even like, you know, gate, para samgate, bodhisoha. You know, just keep going until we really have attained complete enlightenment and inseparably, you know, radiating, you know, that for all beings, and always every step of the way, as much as we can, thinking of others, you know. And just beginning that seems like it just loosens up our mind and our rigid habitual patterns, because obviously that's it too, we have them. We can't expect to all of a sudden be fully enlightened. It's good to aspire to, but
Well, that's
we
kind
need
of
to
what I
act in
say.
our
Just that
capacities.
first, that thought of enlightenment is the most important. I think that's part of what like you're talking about too, is just like bodhicitta on the relative level keeps us grounded, keeps us like really like kind of clear in terms of our daily activities, like thinking of others really, and then it's that thought of enlightenment, which we could also say, like we were talking about in the last study group, devotion, you know, the quality of like really seeing all these incredible qualities of the enlightened beings and our teachers, and like really aspiring, like that keeps us open and keeps us from like getting stuck in like kind of more mundane, you know, activities. So it's kind of like always this at least two-tiered approach of like on the relative level, really like thinking of beings, like love, letting that love pervade our hearts and minds and everything we're doing, and like keeping it always open, ever open through devotion, through, you know, the contemplating the view, however you want to say it, but like that, more like, you know.
So maybe I'll go into this third.
We have, I think, what?
Yeah. So there's
13 minutes or?
Yeah, so I'll do the third section real quick. So Rinpoche say that loving kindness and compassion have many benefits. Ultimately, that loving kindness and compassion bring enlightenment. And then relatively, there are 8 benefits that we'll discuss in this third topic. And then lastly, in this final paragraph, Rinpoche say it's important to know the value of having beneficial thoughts, and then to actually practice them. And we have to practice this. Always begin our practice with this motivation of loving kindness and bodhicitta, and then conclude by dedicating the merit for the enlightenment and benefit of all beings, and that this activity would then accumulate immeasurable merit, and then move us towards enlightenment very quickly. So I thought, Lodro, maybe you read the third point, please.
When Buddha Shakyamuni taught the benefits of relative bodhicitta, he said that ultimately it results in enlightenment. And relatively it brings 8 special results. The The first of these is that your body and mind remain relaxed and joyful. The second result of practicing love and compassion is freedom from illness. Disease cannot attack you. The third is protection from external attacks through weapons. The fourth is protection from poison. If somebody gives you poison, or if you accidentally take poison, it will not kill you. The fifth result is that you will be greatly appreciated by everyone, not only human beings, but non-human beings as well. The sixth is that you will be protected by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the realized beings who have already developed bodhicitta. The seventh benefit is that you will be reborn in the higher realms. The eighth is that all of your wishes will be spontaneously fulfilled. You will achieve whatever you desire without difficulty.
Wow.
Yeah. Sounds like we're getting natural.
Good incentive.
But I had a question about this, just a little confusion. Because it says you can't be harmed by poison, you won't get sick, everyone will appreciate you, or it says beings, but anyway, but it seems like quite a few people who have developed those things to the highest level have gotten sick and been poisoned and been attacked by weapons, and so I don't know what that means or what that is.
I don't know the answer, but a thought just comes to mind in response to that is just that maybe it's, maybe those things appear to be happening, but it's more like their level of suffering isn't there.
Where is our mind? You know what I mean? This whole thing, like we were talking about earlier, being subject to conditions so much, looking for things, or relying so much out. But it seems like it really does come to different degrees, and then there's a degree of our realization too. I mean, who knows on the outer level how all these things look? And like, of course, we shouldn't be dismayed if we get sick, or if, whatever happens. That might, but it's where we are in our mind, like how we're perceiving what's happening to us and relating to it. But like even that beautiful, image of the dawn, like right before Buddha's enlightenment, when all the legions and infinite like armies of Maras were all, throwing all kinds of weapons at the Buddha. But just that loving kindness and that, like, all these qualities were right there. Like, all the weapons turned to flowers and, an image. So I think definitely the fact that we're working with our mind and our own ways of dealing with what's arising and how we see what's arising is definitely part of it. And then I think like we can see just in like the openness of reality, the more we have a recognition of that and like the emptiness nature, the essence of all phenomena that's arising, including subject, object, all these levels, then naturally, which is bodhicitta, that's the whole part of bodhicitta training too, is then that we see all these what seems miraculous, to beings. When we have more of an understanding of that, then I can see on that level definitely how these things, maybe even to an ordinary being seen from the outside, maybe it's all these things true,
Yeah.
There's definitely, even the Buddha, there's those stories too, how like when Devadatta threw the big boulder and a little chip came and hit the Buddha. But that was still the ripening of some little bit of karma, but it didn't really hurt the Buddha too much, or just the way that too, it's lessening. The karma is everything, bodhicitta just transforms everything, it seems.
And it seems too, like they said, like in Shantideva said, literally, if you overcome your own ego clinging and you're filled with bodhicitta, you have no enemies.
Right.
Literally, because enemy depends on two sides. You consider me your enemy, but I don't consider you my enemy.
Right.
Therefore, you're not my enemy. If I have love and kindness towards you, then no matter if you stab me, or that's what the teaching said, even if they pull you apart limb from limb, but you'll have no enemies that anyone could find in the whole universe. Because your side is, you conquered your only enemy, which is your own selfish, ego-clinging antagonistic thoughts. So from that perspective too, it makes more sense to me.
Final statements? Final?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it brought up in the special results that this bodhicitta does lessen ego clinging, like you're talking about, the sense of how far me, I want, and does that come out in these 8?
I mean, definitely, because what they're talking about here, this boundless love, is the recognition of the emptiness nature of love, and therefore having it naturally come out and include all beings, appreciating their own Buddha nature too. So, I mean, it's just to say that anytime it's talking about love in this chapter, it's always emptiness is always there, the openness quality of love too. So here...
Relaxed and
so
joyful.
we know we
Yeah.
are
The first one.
a little over 40 minutes.
Yep. I think this is saying that if we have boundless love, these are the results that come. And some of these are that once we're fully expressive of that nature, meaning we're a Buddha and nothing's blocking it, then this is what comes for, I mean, these are the qualities that all these Buddhas experience, and as we more and more come close to that, then more and more we experience these qualities like on our own side, and we're not experiencing the difficulties either, just in our own minds.
I think all of these are talking about less ego clinging. I mean, I think with each of these results, it's almost like just maybe not said specifically, but that's what it means, is that like there's less ego clinging involved in every single one.
I mean, that's why like the Buddha calls them poison. Like, I mean, here it's talking about poison, poison, but just that sense of, that's why the Buddha calls the ignorance, attachment, aversion, and then all the rest of the negative emotions poisons, right? Because it's just that, no matter what you put it in or mix it with, it's poison in that sense. And that's ultimately that ego clinging is definitely the thing that's really spoiling the whole natural beauty of things.
And the first step, I think, of this love is we love ourselves. And then if we can love our ego clinging in the sense of not being so tight and hard on ourselves, then that is how we get the practice off the ground. It is how we relate to others and see how they're the same as me. And we really definitely start that.
And practice putting ourselves in the other person's shoes. Do I like it when someone throws rocks at me and injures me? No, so I should not throw rocks and injure the other person. Just systematically putting ourselves in other people's shoes, I think, is like the foundation of everyone wants to be happy, and that's what the teachings always say. Nobody wants suffering. So as soon as we can really try to recognize that with every being that we encounter, I mean, then it seems like, I mean, that's what the teachings say. Really, the iceberg starts crumbling.
So simple and so vast and beautiful. And I'm sure everyone will have their own things to say in the study groups. And does anyone have anything else, or should we dedicate the merit?
Happy holidays!
Happy holidays!
Om Swasti Vidsayantu Chosum Sasum Jittu Benmaju Nine Sode Tuje Tujinji Kinchin Bale Jira Trubeku Yojun Tendro Sezanta Jinsho Om Swasti Chuku Nantalum Ku Chenresi Chuku Bajun Yabyun Tuje Tu Pela Pasang Jachu Yansika Tendo Pende Dundu Nuchasho Kajira We Kowe Shinkamsu Pendan Dewa Malu Juweni Chenresi Wan Tenzin Japsohi Jabe Kaje Badu Tenjoji
Om Swasti. Sevan Rigzin Vemejin Laji. Dungi Drupe Laksan Nodenla. Shetu Kolo Sunji Bajote. Sanchen Natan Jole Namja Sho. By this merit may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The precious bodhichitta, and those without it, may it be generated, and those who have it, may it never diminish, but always continue increasing.